Get ready, Columbia. Soda City Comic Con 2025 is turning up the heat this summer. It all goes down August 23rd and 24th at the Columbia Metropolitan Convention Center, and the guest lineup is already packed with fan favorites. Let's start with Katie Sackhoff. Yeah, Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica and Bo-Katan Kryze from The Mandalorian and Clone Wars. She's a sci-fi icon and one of the coolest people to ever wield a blaster. Then there's John Heater, the man, the myth, the Napoleon Dynamite. From Blades of Glory to Surf's Up and everything awkwardly hilarious in between, he's bringing the signature charm to Soda City. And rounding it out, we've got Caitlin Robrock, the incredible voice of Minnie Mouse in Mickey Mouse Funhouse, Minnie's Bowtie Tunes, and many more. She's also voiced characters in Agrasuko, Amphibia, and Mr. Pickles, a true animation powerhouse. They'll all be there, signing autographs, taking selfies, and meeting fans all weekend long. And this is just the beginning. Even more celebrity guests are being announced, so keep checking SodaCityComicCon.com for the latest updates, guest lists, ticket info, and VIP perks. Make your summer unforgettable. Grab those tickets and come celebrate all things pop culture at Soda City Comic Con. Hey everybody, Barrett from the All About Nothing podcast. Look, one of the things we love to do is shout out small businesses doing cool things, and ZJZ Designs is one of them. They make these awesome seasonal and themed t-shirts, and they're not just eye-catching, they're high quality. I've ordered a few, and they've held up in the wash after wash. Plus, it feels good knowing I'm supporting a creative shop, not just feeding the Amazon machine. So if you want something fresh, funny, and made with a little extra heart, hit up ZJZDesigns.com. You'll definitely find something there to love. ZJZDesigns.com. Check them out. This fall, get back in the game with Everplay Sports and Social League, Columbia's home for fun, fitness, and friends. We've got leagues firing up all over town starting September 7th. Mushball softball at T.S. Martin Park, pickleball at Casey Pickleball Complex, turf soccer at Recreation Arena, indoor volleyball at Tri-City Leisure Center, bowling at Lucky Strikes, sand volleyball at Pollywogs, soccer at B Avenue and Bray Park, cornhole at Jay's Corner, hardball softball at Pacific Park, and kickball at M Avenue and B Avenue, including our same team pitch option. Kick it all off at the fall kickoff party, Thursday, September 4th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Jay's Corner. We're giving away a ton of random raffles, and it's the perfect chance to meet your teammates before the season starts. Register by August 21st to dodge the late fees and score some limited edition fall league shirts. Hit everplaysocial.com to lock in your spot. Everplay Sports and Social. Play hard. Party harder. Morning, everyone. Saturday morning, Barrett Gruber. Let's talk about that. It has been an interesting week. I'll just say it's been a fairly interesting week. There have been some fairly notable news events that have gone on this week. To get started, I guess this week we did finally see the resignation of a representative here, District 88, South Carolina State House. I know I'm wearing an Alabama shirt, but, get over that. It's not really that big a deal. We did see the resignation of R.J. May this week, which then prompted conversations about my potential running for that seat. And after many discussions, mentoring in some cases, conversations about what would probably be my path or my decision on that. After many discussions of such, the decision came down to what was the burden going to be for myself or my family in that situation, and frankly, the decision was that it just wasn't the right opportunity for me, and it's definitely something that I considered to be something that I think that I would like to do. Because ultimately, a lot of it comes down to I don't know. I don't like the fact that my district isn't represented by someone like me. RJ May, when he was in office here for District 88, didn't do a whole lot to represent me or people that are like-minded like me. RJ May was a very conservative MAGA Republican. In the conversations that I had with RJ May, they typically borderlined insanity, if I'm being completely honest. The only real platform he had was that he was going to represent Donald Trump as well as he could in what is a fairly growing diverse population here in District 88. Admittedly, there are a lot of Republicans. There's rural areas to District 88, but there's also some urban areas to District 88. And RJ May was the owner of a very conservative, I guess the best word to describe it, a very conservative campaign management company. That was his business. He was a campaign manager for other Republicans, including Alan Wilson and Joe Wilson and Ralph Norman. This was a guy that represented or he had a campaign management company that represented those campaigns. And opportunistically, RJ May also ran for office. He put his, I guess he put his money where his mouth was, which is sometimes different than putting your mouth where your money is. But if you think about it, it still makes sense. So, RJ May campaigned on things like being the most stringent in protecting children, whether it was through the books they read or the fact that parents should have access to every single bit of what potentially teachers were going to teach. He had his campaign platform a lot of the time wasn't necessarily about the things that are important in District 88, which is the district I live in, District 88, infrastructure, education, and healthcare. I think for the most part, those are some of the most important things in a lot of the districts across South Carolina. And those never seem to be what was important in those things didn't seem to be important in his platform. So for him to represent this district and only have a platform about the protection of children, I guess it really sort of didn't represent us. It didn't represent what was going on here. And as many of those individuals that have a campaign platform that is primarily geared towards what is intended to scare voters, he had jumped on top of that. He used his platform. He used it basically to scare voters into continuing to vote for the status quo, and it worked. He got elected in 2020. He handedly he won. Not just because he won, not just because people voted for him, but because he also benefited from the fact that
a lot of voters in this district will only tug the party line, and that's what they do. They all vote the party line. The voters that turn out are very Republican, and they voted for him. So 2020 he wins. 2022 governor's race, he wins. People pull the party line again, or the voters pull the party line. So they don't work their way down the ballot. They typically will just pull the party ticket here in South Carolina, which is to the benefit of the Republicans, because in South Carolina, Republicans do turn out to vote, or at least more Republicans turn out to vote than Democrats. So 2022, he gets reelected. Governor McMaster's gets reelected. Alan Wilson gets reelected. Most of the statewide offices. We see the election of a superintendent of education here in South Carolina that has the benefit of the backing financially of national super PACs. Same as the governor, same as the attorney general. And it is, again, it's disappointing. It's disappointing to see that these elections occur without really the influence of a politician having to really dive into their own platform, I guess. South Carolina Republicans don't have to normally campaign that hard. South Carolina Republicans don't hold town halls. What's the point? They're going to get reelected is how they typically hold that. So that all aside, RJ May was arrested and indicted for something that he campaigned vehemently to try and weed out. He campaigned to protect children, and yet he was indicted by a grand jury and arrested under the suspicion. In an indictment, he was arrested for evidence that was collected under suspicion of his involvement in the disbursement and retainment of child endangerment videos. I won't say you get canceled, which is still crazy to me that the party of vehemently disagreeing with cancel culture is the party that's out there canceling the most. So RJ May resigned from his seat this week, which again spurred a lot of conversations about who's going to run, when's the special election going to be, and I was approached back when RJ May was actually arrested about the potential of running for that seat under the Democratic Party. And I gave it serious thought then, but even then I came back to sort of the same conclusion. How is this going to affect my family? Do I have the time available? Would my job support it? And I also came to the realization that the likelihood is that seat would not be vacated anytime soon. And I was 100% correct. He was arrested back in March. I think that's accurate. He was arrested back in March. He's been in jail since March awaiting a trial. And in that time, he did not resign his seat. The governor didn't call for a special session to remove him from office, which would have then prompted a special election because every district has to be represented. Unless apparently you're in Texas and your representative gets checked into hospice care and nobody knows where they're at for 6 months. But at least in South Carolina, there's a standard or an expectation that when a seat is empty, a special election is called for. And that special election then generates a new representative. So it happens often enough that there is a practice. So after RJ May resigned, I had given serious consideration to running for that seat. Again, discussed with my family, discussed it with friends, discussed it with current representatives. And there were a lot of factors. I mean, lots of pros, lots of cons. But in the end, the decision is that the party would probably be supported better with someone who had the availability, because it wasn't me. And I'm disappointed. I am, because again, I think that I best represent myself. I think a lot of people would say that. But based on experience, history, yeah, I best represent myself. So when I say availability, what does that mean? So in order to run for office, you have to have several things, maybe at the same time, or maybe just out of pure necessity. There are things that you have to have in order to be able to run for office successfully, and then to actually be in office. And one of those is some financial stability that can afford you being away after you're elected during session. And session usually runs from January until May. January till May is a long time, especially if you work in corporate America, especially if you are billable to if you are billable to a client where your actual work time is billed to that client. I work for a company where my time is billable. I am a SQL query writer. I lead a group of other quality assurance testers, although lately I feel like it's more quantity assurance testers than quality. But I lead a group that does that for software for insurance companies, property and casualty insurance companies. And even though my direct report, the person that I report directly to, even though she had told me that she fully supported me running for office, potential of being elected, which honestly, I'm putting it about 49, 51% possibility. But even that possibility of running, she was fine with. That possibility of winning, she was fine with. Those things were fine. The only caveat to that was, how would we potentially keep me employed through the period of the legislative session without impacting my health? Because if I'm on a billable project, I have to work, and session sometimes can be anywhere between 5 hours a day to potentially 20 hours a day, just dependent on what the workload is during session. And that's the reality, is that I could be looking at several weeks, week after week after week, of having to put in anywhere between 16 and 20-hour days between both jobs. And while, so that's one of the necessities, is you have to have that ability to put in those long hours and perform at the top of your abilities for weeks on weeks on weeks, to still have a job that pays your income and a job of you representing your district. And being that I have reached the age of 46, I have recognized some limitations in those abilities without proper health, rest, exercise, all of the things that you have to do for yourself in order to continue to be healthy. So, the availability of time and health and everything like that was a con. And ultimately, that's the most disappointing part is finding those limitations in yourself that you recognize you can't do it. As well, the financial end of it. So to run for office, you have to have that financial stability. So you either have to have a job that's going to allow you to do it and still get paid for that job, even though you may not be operating at 100% for them, or you have to have some sort of financial stability like generational wealth, or you own your own business and you can still pay yourself even though you may not be doing the job that's performing that business. So those are legitimate. Or you're young enough, you still live with your parents and you don't have a job and you can just do it, So yeah, those are the things that kind of weigh in. And a leave of absence from work probably is not, the most difficult thing. But you don't really typically get paid. So, these are all of the things you have to consider in order to do it. And those are the things I considered. So I did let those know who had approached me to ask me if I would consider it, and I did consider it, and I told them exactly why it was not a good idea to choose me, and they were grateful that I at least considered it. I gave it some serious thought and absolutely understood, and several of them said the same thing. Well, let's hope that it works out that you can potentially run in the future. And again, I will consider that when it comes up too, because I'd like to. So, but the good news is RJ May is out. We are going to have a special election. The voters in this district are going to have the opportunity to vote to have someone represent them. As far as I know, based on the internet, I've only actually seen one individual so far formally announce that they are running. And that is a gentleman who attempted to mount a write-in vote in basically from August of 2024 until the election in 2024, the general election. And that's a gentleman who goes by the name of Brian Duncan. He is a Republican in this district. He is a lifelong Lexington resident. And because I host a podcast that does typically have politicians on it, I have extended him an offer to come on to our show. I say an offer, an invitation. I have extended him an invitation to come on the podcast so that one, I can meet him because I am potentially someone that would vote against him or for him. But to really dive into what his intentions are. Because one of the things that I've always been pretty good at is observing people's behavior and listening to them, watching them, and not like a human lie detector, but I can tell when I'm being lied to. People have tells, and once you find that tell, you can't ignore it. So we have extended Brian Duncan an invitation to the podcast. That was yesterday, and I have not heard back from him. But it's the weekend. Let people have their weekends. So that is the update on what is going on with the potential District 88 run. It isn't going to be me. Not this time. not next year. But I have at least put forth the effort to try and get those individuals that will be candidates. I've also extended an offer to host a town hall / debate on the All About Nothing podcast to potentially have those candidates be able to have a moderated conversation. So we will see how that goes. Also want to remind everyone that coming up very, very soon, this coming Wednesday, Preach Jacobs is going to be hosting an event at the Soul House Sessions at the USC Koger Center for the Arts. That is going to be August 20th. I know that there are only a few tickets left for this, so you definitely want to get on that. You can search Eventbrite for Soul House Sessions. That's S-O... I'm going to do it again. SOULHAUS Sessions with Preach Jacob. It's going to be featuring author, columnist, and activist Nikki Kenny. She's going to be speaking for this engagement, as well as there will be artwork there by Dre Lopez, and Preach Jacobs himself is going to be DJing the music for the event. So, like I said, limited tickets available for this left. So if you already have your tickets, love you. Thank you for doing that. If you haven't gotten your ticket yet, do it, because the idea is that it's likely going to sell out. So we want to make sure that you get in there so you can see that. Also, the registration for both the Fall 2025 League for Everplay Sports and Social, that is coming to a close on August 21st. So if you haven't registered for a sport, there are tons of sports. You got mushball, softball, you've got regular softball. These are all co-ed. There is soccer and pickleball and bowling and there's plenty of sports. So if you kickball is one of the biggest. So if you haven't done that yet, do that. August 21st, Everplay Sports and Social, everplaysocial.com. Also, the 10th Masters of Putt-Putt is going to be this coming Friday, August 22nd at Frankie's Fun Park. The registration deadline is August 21st. There are costumes encouraged for this. You can sign up again, Everplay Sports and Social. You can sign up through their website, everplaysocial.com. There's going to be awards for the best dressed at the putt-putt as well. So, as well, and the episode that is releasing on Monday was with Donald Brock Jr., who is one of the coordinators at the top of the spear, I guess. Donald Brock is one of the coordinators along with Steve Powell. You know what? I'm just going to call him Steve just to make sure, because I know me, I get names wrong. The 2025 Soda City Comic Con is literally next weekend. So if you're watching this live right now, or you're listening to it before the 23rd, Soda City Comic Con is this weekend. And going to have Katie Sackhoff, of course, from Battlestar Galactica and Star Wars features. Going to have John Heater, who is, as many know, he is the Napoleon Dynamite. He was also in one of my favorite movies, which is Benchwarmers, with Rob Schneider, David Spade. Terrific individual from what I'm being told. Randy Quaid is also one of the featured guests. Caitlin Robrock, who was a guest on our podcast this week. That episode dropped this past week, so you can go check that out, theallaboutnothing.com. But yeah, so Soda City Comic Con is this weekend. Next weekend, the 23rd and 24th at the Columbia Metropolitan Convention Center. Again, lots of guests featured there. They're going to have very lively panels where the featured guests are going to get up and get to speak. So tickets available, sodacitycomiccon.com. Tickets also available at the door. So if you don't have anything going on next weekend? Shit. If you've got stuff going on next weekend, at least plan for a day at the Soda City Comic Con between the vendors and the guests and the artists and everything that happens at Soda City Comic Con. It's worth the trip. It's worth the price of the ticket to go in there. There are still a very small handful of VIP tickets that are available. So if it interests you to do that, do it today because those are going to be gone. Really cool VIP lanyard. These aren't them, but I think I saw it had Dr. Doom on it this year. It's an artwork that features Dr. Doom. So very cool. So go do that. Again, Soda City Comic Con, August 23rd, 24th at the Columbia Metropolitan Convention Center here in Columbia, South Carolina. Do that. The last thing that I did want to discuss was one of the big things that happened this week was the National Guard being deployed to Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C., in some people's opinion, has become overridden with crime and homelessness. And part of that was because the former DOJ employee, now employee of the Social Security Administration, has a couple weeks ago, he goes by the name of Big Balls, but he got beat up in the street by two 14-year-olds, one of them being by a girl. He was carjacked. And that's according to the reports. And because Donald Trump cares so much for Big Balls and the state of the crime in Washington, D.C., it prompted Donald Trump to say, hey, let's take over the streets of Washington, D.C. with the National Guard, FBI agents becoming police officers, and then let's federalize the city police. Now, he's allowed to do this. And admittedly, Washington, D.C. is not the first place I think of when I think utopian society that is without crime. Washington, D.C. definitely has crime. Washington, D.C. is a city that I have not visited in a while, but I can absolutely think of specific areas that do have a fair amount of potential or violent crime. So it's not unheard of in Washington, D.C. Are there places in the United States that have higher crime rates, higher murder rates? Yeah, there are. But Washington, D.C. falls under the federal, I'm not sure how to describe it, I guess the federal jurisdiction of the United States government, and has the ability through the Constitution to engage its authority to try and make changes. And because of that, that means the president is the one that is allowed to call in the National Guard for that situation. And it's fine. Like, I don't think it's great, but it definitely brings up questions about January 6, 2021, when Donald Trump had the ability to call in the National Guard during the insurrection. And I think anyone with any sort of critical thinking would ask themselves, well, if Donald Trump can call in the National Guard because his friend, Big Balls, got beat up by two 14-year-olds on the street and carjacked, or whatever it is that happened, then why didn't he call in the National Guard during January 6, 2021's insurrection? Why did he blame Nancy Pelosi for not calling in the National Guard? Something that isn't within her purview. It wasn't within her ability to do that. The president is the only one in Washington, D.C. that can call forth to have the National Guard come in a time of emergency. And Big Balls getting beaten up, to me, isn't that national emergency, or isn't that at least localized emergency that requires the National Guard's attention. So I question why. I have to ask myself, obviously the Capitol has nearly 10,000 people there that have taken to the grounds. There are people smashing the windows. There are people, regardless of who you think it was. I mean, if you're on that side of individuals that thinks that the Capitol building was being overridden by incels of Antifa or Black Lives Matter or rogue liberal Democrats, if that's your opinion, keep your opinion. I mean, I wouldn't tell a lot of people that's what you think, but keep your opinion. But if that is your opinion, then you have to ask yourself, if that was the case, then why didn't Donald Trump use the power of the presidency to have the National Guard come sweeping in during January 6th? I imagine it was well known to him then that he could do that. And yet he sat down in the White House dining room and at one point threw something with ketchup on it at the wall. I'm assuming steak. I don't know. I'm sure McDonald's was open. I've never seen him eat French fries. I don't know how much ketchup he uses on French fries. But we do know that he is a ketchup and steak man based on his own admittance. But one of the tools that he's using this National Guard for is that it is to root out homelessness in Washington, D.C., which homelessness is a problem across the country. Homelessness is one of those things that I keep arguing is completely solvable. There is, and just to be brief on it, we can end homelessness in practice. Our government, roughly in the United States, about 750,000 people are homeless that live on the streets, that are incapable currently of having a roof over their head that isn't going to have to be replaced tomorrow because it rained. The cost to potentially house 750,000 people, it's less than 1% of the population, to get them off the streets would cost, I think, somewhere between $13 and $40 billion, depending on their needs. And when I say get them off the streets, I mean it's going to be housing, it's going to be medical care, it's going to be potential education, it's going to be, there's a lot more than just putting them in a house. It's actually putting them in a house so that you can help them pick themselves up. It is a social net. And there is absolutely ways that you could work $13 to $40 billion into the budget every year. Somehow we expand on the Defense Department by 5 times that sometimes. We could end homelessness through programs that we have the money. Well, we have federal money that could be used to do that. If the idea is that you want to end homelessness, putting them on a bus and sending them to some internment camp in Florida or in the swamps of South Carolina or whatever, that isn't a solution. That is a Band-Aid. And we're the richest flipping country in the world. Like, if we see a problem, we should fix it. Why don't we do that anymore? Well, because we've had plenty of people out there say you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. And sometimes the people aren't wearing boots. It's just a fact. And I don't know exactly what it would take, but the estimates that have been published are anywhere between $13 and $40 billion a year could resolve, and it would decrease. It would decrease over time. But it would fix homelessness in this country. And ultimately, that's the goal. Our government, we pay our government to fix things. And we've identified a problem, but they're not fixing it. So, we'll talk more on that about homelessness and such in the podcast. I know I've seen the comments. A lot of people want to talk about Trump and Putin in Alaska. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of details on that because there haven't been a whole lot of details released. What we have had is the only thing that we know for certain is apparently at some point talks broke down. They didn't go through with some luncheon that they both wound up leaving. They didn't go through with a post-summit press conference. Trump went back to Washington, D.C. Putin went back to Moscow, and that was it. So Trump said that they got close, but they didn't. He didn't get what he wanted, and I imagine that what he wanted was a ceasefire. And I want a ceasefire. And if Putin is going to give every excuse as to why he can't or won't commit to a ceasefire in Ukraine, yeah, you walk away. And if that's what Trump did, kudos. Because that's what I would want him to do. Have a list of goals. And if those goals aren't met, you try to go back and forth. You try to figure out how to get to those goals. And if you just can't get to those goals, stop wasting your time. Don't waste his time. Don't waste your... Well, although wasting Putin time, I think, would benefit the world as well. But I saw the videos. And even as a progressive, I'm going to tell you, Donald Trump didn't look like Putin's lapdog to me. Just based on the way he held himself around Putin, he didn't look like he was Putin's puppet. He definitely portrayed, again, I'm very observant of people's behaviors. He didn't look weak to Putin. He didn't look like Putin's lapdog. He didn't look like he was there to just submit to Putin. Putin looked a little weak. Watching Putin walk down the stairs from his airplane, I'll be honest, I thought it was Putin being played by Cotton Hill from King of the Hill, Hank Hill's dad, who's dead. But Putin looked like he's not doing well health-wise. Like when he stepped downstairs off of the plane, he turned sideways to step down. He doesn't look healthy to me. But that's my opinion. But Trump didn't look like he was there to just submit to Putin. And if Putin and Trump didn't come up with the agreements or if the two of them negotiating couldn't reach what Donald Trump's goals were, and I absolutely believe Donald Trump hates war. Like, that's one of the reasons he wants a Nobel Peace Prize is because he hates war. Like, he finds war to be completely unnecessary. And you look at the evidence, like wars in Thailand and Cambodia and Rwanda and Africa. Like he has not intervened in some of those, but he has at least through, and I don't know who told him. He may have found it himself, but he has at least mentioned them. It's not really enough to get a Nobel Peace Prize, but so we don't have all the details on what happened between Putin and Alaska. We may never know. The only thing we do know is that they both walked away, and that's it. So, well, for those of you that have tuned into this ranting of a middle-aged man, I'll just close out by saying that the All About Nothing podcast we release weekly, and as well as we do a couple kind of daily shows a week. My friend Bill Kimler, who is the host of Black, White, and Blue in the South, we do these episodes twice a week. Tuesday, we actually do them live, kind of like this. Twice a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, 5:30 in the morning till 6, just a half hour, just to touch base, talk about what's going on, keep everybody up to date. And episodes of the All About Nothing podcast we release every Monday. So if you haven't, follow me at Barrett Gruber across all of social media. As well, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, all of those. You can check theallaboutnothing.com. There's a link to all of my socials. But mostly follow the podcast. We're always looking for new members to sign up and support the podcast because, we'd love for the podcast to pay for itself. So if you have it in you, you can go to members.theallaboutnothing.com and sign up for a tiered memberships available. $3 a month is the least expensive that's out there that gets you access to episodes early as well as exclusive episodes that were released or content that we release only to members. So give that a look. Again, members.theallaboutnothing.com. So check that out. So that is going to do it for me. Again, I am Barrett Gruber. You can find me across all social media at Barrett Gruber. The podcast is the All About Nothing podcast. My partner Zach King and I record every week with either guests or just us. So consider doing it. Thank you very much. You all stay safe, be kind, and keep your hands to yourself.
The preceding podcast is a product of Big Media, LLC, and is copyright 2025, all rights reserved.